Hello and welcome back to yet another week of PolitiBabble, where we're now on episode 8 of our season, and it's soon coming up to the Christmas break. But yes, our question for this week, I think, is something to do with morals and politics. I'm Archibald Elliott, and as usual, I'm joined by my absolutely awful co-host, Oliver Sykes.
You're taking it.
We'll have to have a change up here.
We've taken a turn for the worst here, Archie.
Indeed, yes.
Yes, I am Oliver Sykes, Archibald's co-host.
Yes, and like politics has taken a turn for the worst, so has this podcast's adjectives. Yes, notice that I changed things up there at the start. From wonderful every week.
You certainly did, Archie.
Yes. Thought it might be entertaining. But yes, this week we're talking about morals in politics. I'm not sure exactly what our question phrasing was. I neglected to add it into my little note section. What is our question, Oliver?
Well, I suppose we sort of mentioned.
Do we have a question?
Well, maybe we don't. But I suppose we have sort of topics, under branching off. I mean, we could go into a sort of a mind map kind of thing of where we're going with this. But I sort of thought, an interesting point to talk about this week, especially in the events that are currently happening. I'm sure if you've been watching the news, or if you haven't, you can stay tuned and you can listen to our current affairs section, where we will get you right up to date with what's been going on.
Oliver doing our advertising here.
Yes, of course. I mean, what better reason, if you haven't listened to the news this week, to carry on listening to this exceptional podcast. Anyway,
it was actually surprised we managed to get in, because there's been awful storms here at the moment. I can't remember the name.
Storm Barra.
Storm Barra, yeah.
Barra, yeah.
But the sunken gardens in Douglas
has turned
into sunken gardens. They were absolutely flooded when the sea came over the seawall. So we've definitely seen some wild weather.
Yeah, which is not surprising because the original bay wall of Douglas Harbour, if you walk behind W.H. Smith on the island, there is the reminisce, or the previous sea wall is actually located on the back of that. You can actually see it there.
We reclaimed the land.
Yeah.
And now we're wondering, why on earth is it flooding? Why is it sinking? I do wonder.
Yes, so as I was saying to Archie, sort of said, what could we talk about this week? And I thought, well, with the apparent sort of situation that's in the news at the moment, I thought, we could discuss, is it okay for rules to be broken, accountability, and then that's sort of led to morals in politics, which are questionable at the moment, one does have to say.
Questionable? That implies they were there in the first place, Oliver.
Well, perhaps they, I don't. It's
Does politics need to be moral? Sometimes
you're asking yourself the question.
Sometimes the best course of action isn't necessarily what you would argue is the most moral course of action, because it depends how we define moral. How would you define moral?
Well, I define it in my own way, without not looking at any sort of anything else influencing me from here. I'd say moral is, I suppose, what one perceives as doing the right thing. Crikey, my voice went a bit funny there. But what one perceives to be doing the right thing. It's a broad term. But
is the right thing necessarily moral? Because what one believes is the right thing to do, I could believe that, honestly, killing 10 people to save 100 is the right thing to do. But those 10 people would probably argue different. They would argue, no, that you should kill the 100 rather than those 10, because to them, maybe it's selfish that they want to kill the 10. Or you could argue that me thinking throwing tea at people, that is the right course of action, because in my belief system, that's right. Are we necessarily to question others' belief systems to whether they have the correct form of belief system, whether they have the correct version of morals?
Well,
Oliver wasn't expecting grilling today, but no, he's got one anyway.
He's following on from last week.
I've turned up the barbecue.
Yes, you certainly have. But I suppose, you make a fair point there. But I suppose it's what... It's a way of behaving that would be, accepted by everyone, isn't it? I mean, yeah.
But then if we look at some moral actions in government, some would say, for example, the austerity measures that David Cameron introduced in 2010 to control the deficit, that was a right decision. And then you have another group which say, no, that was the wrong decision. So there's never really this mass consensus in politics. Some would view austerity as perfectly moral. It's the right thing to do, to not weigh debt, or even larger debt on our future generations, on our children. And others say, no, it's the wrong thing to do. We're now cutting services they view as essential, or services which they choose to put in the hands of government rather than provide for themselves. So we see these two different camps. Is then morality, for example, a questionable idea? Is it more moral for one person but not moral for the next? Should we be judging politics on its morality?
Well, in some degree, yes. I mean, we'll move on to soon the 7 principles of public life, which many politicians believe to be fundamental in being a politician, in being honest, open, and being it's sort of the principles of doing what's right. Do you agree with the 7 principles?
But you see, the seven principles are, I'll name them: selfishness, integrity, objectivity, selflessness.
Oh, phew,
not self. Although that might apply to some people. Objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership. Morality doesn't come into there, Oliver. Morality doesn't form a matter there. Morality could arguably, I think, is very fluid.
Yes, but in terms of what I'm saying is the actions that they take, being sort of, how can I put it? I'm struggling to find my words here, but when it comes to sort of being doing things in the wrong way, for example, being dishonest, lying and other such things, how can we say that this person is, ready? It's not ready, but is fit for the job? Is an okay person to represent people?
Is lying always wrong?
Yes, lying is.
It's always wrong.
For the most part, lying is always wrong.
What happens? What would you class lying as then?
Saying something that you haven't done. Saying something you haven't done.
No, but lying is not necessarily stuff for something you have done.
Okay.
But let's say I believe my civil servant hasn't gone to a Christmas party and broken lockdown rules. They've told me they're not doing lockdown rules and they're following them. So then I say to the House, and I say to the House of Commons potentially, the civil servants in my department haven't had a lockdown party.
Well,
it turns out
but
I've been lied to, and then therefore I'm saying something which is untrue. That then arguably you could argue that's an unintentional lie. You've been misled. You're saying something you believe was true. If you believe something is true, is it a lie? Like you say something which you believe is true, and it turns out to be untrue. Is that lying?
Well, not really. But you would say, if you weren't certain, you'd say, well, for the most part, I believe that this happened.
But you look at. I think you can look at politics in general, and again, you even look at a wartime situation with propaganda, where you don't want to say we're going to lose the war, because then you're going to have lack of morale. You're going to say we're going to win this war. Is that necessarily a bad case of lying? Your morality issue there is you're either going to incentivize your soldiers, and you could actually go and win the war. But you don't know whether you win the war. You think it's likely you would lose, but you want to have that morale. You want to have that morale there put out to have maybe a propaganda campaign for wartime. That then is again a situation where politicians don't necessarily have to tell the truth. Or again, we look at issues of national security. It's either avoiding the questions. That's what most politicians do. So they don't necessarily lie, but they avoid the questions. Is that as bad as lying?
But avoiding the questions clearly show that something's not quite right.
But is that bad as lying? Or
it isn't. It isn't as bad as lying. No, but
it's effectively lying, as you said. because they're saying that something's not right. They're saying not saying that's right. They realise they're not saying.
This is
that
getting
anything's
awfully
right.
confusing.
Yeah, but to go back to 7 principles, if we look at it, honesty is there. They should be truthful. I think there is issue with that because it depends what we define. It's getting to a philosophical debate. It depends what we define truth as, because you can unintentionally mislead. You can unintentionally not tell the truth. And again, I don't think there should be ramifications for that. If you genuinely didn't believe, or you believed something and you said it and it turned out not to be true, I don't think there is ramifications behind that. What would you think? Should someone be punished because they said something that turned out to be untrue, even though they thought it was true at the time?
No, I don't think they should. But most of the time, that's not too often the case. And you can usually tell...
Well, let's look at the example actually in the UK. It's an excellent one.
Right,
We don't yet know, but for example, Boris Johnson has said there was no party at number 10 Downing Street.
To the best of his
knowledge. But he's been told there is no party, so he'll continue with the line. There's no party. There may turn out to be a party. There are some called, I think the SNP leader Ian Blackford has called for the Prime Minister to resign because there was a party, and he's saying there's not a party. So. Would you say there's a case then for Boris having misled people, therefore he should go?
Well, if he does mislead Parliament, I think he should resign.
But is it misleading when he's been told he has 1,000 different things going on, and he has to know every detail, and he's told by his civil servants, we haven't had a party. That's not his fault.
If there's a party
so
in the place of his residence, then he should resign. And if he even
though he said, I've been told there's no party. If there was a party, it's disgraceful. I'm launching an investigation into it. But I've been told there's no party. How is he at fault? I'm interested.
The thing is, he says there is no party. So he says there's no party, and he says there's no party. But then, he's got his one of his closest advisors a few days after said party's supposed to have taken place on December the 18th last year. On the 22nd of December, one of his advisors is doing a TV prep interview. She was playing the Prime Minister or whatever, and they're joking around with the question.
Yes, but they didn't ever in the interview admit. They didn't say there was a party. They were joking that, oh no, yeah, I heard on Twitter there was a party. What would I say to that? Well, no, it was a business meeting. Was it a cheese and wine?
Well,
I think, yes, however, that joking obviously shouldn't happen because people were dying from COVID. But I come back to your point. You've said earlier that if someone says something untrue, which they say something they believe, and that turns out to be untrue, but they honestly believed it was true, they've been told it was true, that they're not at fault. So then why should Boris Johnson resign for something that he said, which turns out not to be true, but for his knowledge it was true when he said it?
But when it is true...
Yeah, but
he will resign. I would expect him to resign.
But why? He's not done anything wrong under your moral standards.
He's lying, Archie.
But you said there's a difference between lying and saying something that turns out to be untrue, but you believed it was true at the time. We've made that differentiation.
I know.
We've agreed on that differentiation. So how can you say he's lying when he's clearly said he believes what he was told, and he'll have written documents from civil servants in his prep which will show him that they've told him there is no party. So I'm confused why you say then he should resign on this question of morals.
Because he could be lying. He could be lying about lying that he doesn't know.
Yes, but he's been told, and he'll have papers to show that what he said, that's what he was given, and that's what he then believed. How on earth would you prove it otherwise? If we're looking at this case and we've made the moral distinction between something being a lie and untrue, but thought it was true.
But the one thing that we don't know is whether he was lying about him lying. I'm making this awfully confusing.
No, he did not lie.
He may have attended this party.
But no, this party was a meeting between Downing Street staff.
Yes.
There's no implication at the party being questioned on the 18th of December that was involving the Prime Minister.
Well, we definitely know that there's other parties been taking place, as today I was viewing a video of Jacob Rees-Mogg.
That party was not from last December. It was not in the height of the lockdown. It was him making a joke about the lockdown. The lockdown party that we're not going to investigate it for a year's time for the party we're taking events in. It wasn't actually during that time. It's been a misconception.
I don't believe that, Archie.
That's what I read, it is.
Because I'm watching a video. There is Christmas decorations on the
Yes,
ceiling.
because it's Christmas. It's Christmas in December. We're in December.
So-
We've been in December for 9 days.
But this year.
Exactly. We don't know. I think Mr. Rees-Mogg was speaking at this year's Christmas party for the Institute of Economic Affairs when he had joked about the police investigating last year's event. It was at this year's Christmas party. Let's get. But interestingly, I think this is another point which I'm sure we'll come on to later in the podcast. But it's again the media and the social media misconception. I've seen it shared many times, either on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter, that the Jacob Rees-Mogg was at this party. He should be next to go. But it wasn't actually. There's these misconceptions being played. It was almost playing into the hands of those who want to tear down Boris Johnson. And whilst I disagree with Boris Johnson's general views on COVID and what he's doing at the moment, I would probably be happy to see him be replaced by another person. I don't think we've made this more of a distinction already between someone lying and someone saying something which they thought was honestly true and has turned out not to be. How on earth would you prove that he was lying versus that? The documents show, as far as we know, beyond reasonable doubt, that he, I suppose, wouldn't not have been lying. Otherwise, he's lying to the House, and the yes, he must go. But he's not lying to the House.
But if he does lie to the House,
but he's been misled. If he's been misled and then told something coming from other sources, I think again we make this moral distinction. I find it really interesting. Do you not agree that moral distinction exists in that place? Because you've agreed it earlier in principle. So why doesn't that principle not apply in practice?
Well, because in practice, you know, what we were discussing earlier, for the most part, I do agree with. But with this situation, I do not trust Boris Johnson.
But you can trust the documents which he's been given by civil servants.
I've not seen this. I've not seen the documents.
The documents would exist somewhere, and if he's pulled in front of the House, he'll produce these documents. If the documents exist, this is hypothetically, if the documents exist from civil servants that have told him there's no party, would you then accept that he's not done anything really morally wrong? In this instance,
yes,
there you are.
yeah.
But again, so we don't know. Again, he's not yet being accused of lying. We're assuming guilty before proving guilty. It's almost we should assume innocence rather than guilt in this country. But yeah, I think that again we come on to either morality within politics. Is it moral to then joke about something? Again, we look at this morality. It's not that they were saying we broke down these laws. Ha ha ha! It's so funny. They were just joking about the laws, which arguably they used dark humour because in that time they were heavily pressed as Downing Street staff on dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. It was a bit about a light laugh. Would you agree that this has been almost blown out of proportion? Or do you think it's perfectly proportionate?
Yes, I believe. It's a difficult one. It is a difficult one, and it is difficult because the press are just blowing things out of proportion. But one thing I'd like to move on, if we're sort of staying, I know I want to sort of go back to sort of.
We can come back later. I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here all evening.
Okay. Well, I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask you.
Sure.
But first of all, I've just forgotten what I was going to say. But in terms of do you believe that you know we should trust all politicians to tell the truth? You know, do we believe that all politicians must tell the truth? Do you believe that that we should?
I don't think they should intentionally lie, no. But if they say something again, which has been in many cases in public life, where they've said something that they were told by their civil servants, and then that's turned out to be untrue, I don't think they should be punished for that. They've said what they believe is true, and I think that's the most important part. They shouldn't intentionally mislead. There's a very big difference between unintentionally lying, unintentionally not telling the truth, and intentionally doing it. There's a very big difference here. I think that distinction should be made.
Mm-hmm. very good. And secondly, what else was I going to say? I'm trying to think, but sort of we've seen Boris, mislead Parliament before. Obviously, with the circumstance with Brexit.
Yes, that's more of a legal issue.
Yes, more of a legal issue.
Case.
Yeah. But I'm just going back on sort of what we were saying before. He's not one to always tell the truth.
But again, was it advice that he was given, which then told him no, he was acting perfectly within his realms? It wasn't him saying. I think that's why I've read somewhere that no, it was advice given to him. We see a lot of prime ministers, most of the politicians, what they say, unless if they're a government minister especially, it's all, we even see this on the Isle of Man, it's all given to them by civil servants. We saw it in our interview with the chief minister. He has a whole briefing document in front of him, which is given by the chief minister, which is given by the departmental member, the departmental civil servants, and it said that the schools were being educated about politics.
And
And it's not happening. It doesn't. It wasn't existing. But what he was told by it's told by civil servants. I don't necessarily think the blame needs to be on the politician.
Yeah,
it depends where it's come from.
No, that's definitely a true point there, and I mean that's something that we're very passionate about, and we're not going to let that go at all. Really, I'm one to sort of make sure that's that students are educated on politics, and especially what goes on over here. Because as much as what happens across and internationally is still relevant, here is where where young people can vote from the age of 16, and it's the political education behind it is simply not happening. And I do find it unfair on many young people that they don't get to get informed about that. And it's an annoying one, but.
But going back to the morals of politics, I think that's just an example of where a politician's saying something that they've been told is happening. They don't have. Although yes, they ultimately have responsibility. I don't necessarily think the person at the top of the organisation should take all the fall for something that they believed is true. And obviously they've intentionally misled. There is something that needs to be done. And sometimes they do take the pressure off and resign. I think if you did mislead Parliament or you did do something that was wrong, I think you are bound, honour bound, not necessarily morality, to resign just out of principle. But going on to back to your 7 principles of public life, I think generally those should be put in place to a degree. I think if you look at then political public life, I think I would disagree necessarily on the objectivity part, because holders of public office must act and take decisions impartially and fairly on merit. But sometimes something is a societal issue which doesn't have any merit to it. It doesn't have a impartiality. If we see the argument, I think, there in that what one believes is impartial and fair and has merit, another person doesn't view that as merit in the case. We see this in how the economy is run. Some believe there is merit in high tax and no merit in low tax. Others believe there's merit in low tax and no merit in higher tax. So I think the 7 principles of public life, well, yes, they are good in principle, as they're called principles. I don't think they necessarily work in practice. What do you think?
Yes, in most cases. I mean, I believe that for the most part, the majority of them, simply a politician should uphold them. For example, leadership, honesty, openness, accountability, objectivity. That's questionable. Integrity, definitely. Selflessness, definitely. Yes, the objectivity is the only one that's a bit questionable.
Yeah, I think it is quite, a bit questionable. I agree, but I think there is again this need to look at something. It is necessarily our moral system. Our moral systems in society, I don't think all wrap up. They don't all agree. We have different morals, and different people think different things are moral and things are immoral. I think what the necessity to have in politics is the ability to be transparent and open and not have accusations of cronyism, for example.
Yes.
I think that's important to be open and fair,
Yes.
but not necessarily moral, because what is moral to one isn't moral to another.
Yes.
And I don't think there's any way to decide if that person believes their action was for the best. I think I would call that... I couldn't call that a moral action if it disagrees with my moral system value. Because
For example,
I would be then, someone believes murdering is best. To them, it might be moral. To me, it's absolutely immoral and shouldn't happen. Again, it's an extreme example, but I think there's a distinction that needs to be made here.
Yes, I definitely, I definitely agree with you there. Some would describe, Tony Blair and the Iraq War as immoral, and some would probably say it was moral. It was the right thing to do at the right time. We look on it back now. Most people would say it was immoral thing to do. Like you've said, Archie. It's one of those things. The way I see it is, someone should do, the best thing possible for their constituents, or the people of their country. And I suppose one politician to another, one would be doing a completely moral thing, one would be doing a completely immoral thing.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a difficult thing, because it's how one perceives something to be, isn't it?
Yeah, it's what one believes is morality. I think that's the key question to your question. Is I don't know if politics is necessarily moral, because it doesn't have its own uniquely defined moral system. What we view in the UK as moral is different to what people in China view as moral, or people in Australia, or people in Russia, or people in Singapore. We all have different views of morality, and here in the UK we don't have a death penalty. We see countries like Japan, they have a death penalty because they view this as moral. That, or at least the government views it as moral, otherwise they would remove it. So I think there isn't this there's not this moral framework in place to specifically apply to politics, but there is the ability for, I think it's good if each politician follows their own moral code.
Yes,
I think that's the important part.
Yeah, and I think it's that idea of, the 7 principles of public life are a way in which, people can uphold a certain amount of...
But they're only arbitrary, because again, they were created by a committee. They're not necessarily so ingrained. They're arbitrary, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
We can judge a politician if they're good or bad at the ballot box. That's ultimately what happens.
Yes, indeed. Gosh, it appears to have something's floated into my eye.
Oliver's got so emotional about the topic of morality. He's collapsed, yes.
But I suppose we've come to quite a good conclusion there, I suppose. Apart from me stumbling at the start. Should we? Have you got any other points to discuss?
No, mine are wrapped up.
Right.
I don't think politics is necessarily. We can't apply morality in the usual way of morality to be. I don't think we can apply morality to most things. I think ethics is a different sense of it, but morality, I think, is unique to individual people, and we all have different codes of morality. So I don't think there's a way to class politics as either immoral or amoral, or immoral. Actually, no, amoral is probably a good way to put it. It is without morals, in a way, because they all... arguably, it is without morals, I think, in a way, is its overall structure, but inside, as the main overall set, there's no morals, but individually in the subsets, there are different types of morals. Those on the left think some things are immoral, whereas those on the right think the left's immoral. So I don't think there's any collectivity in that.
Yes, I mean in terms of, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Should we move on to
the current affairs? Yes, I shall let you start out.
Well, the PCR tests on the Isle of Man are of the highest standard, despite rare false results, says Manx Care. There's been a further outbreak of COVID-19 at the Isle of Man prison. The Notfield trial begins for child's home abuse accusations. No cannabis licence has been granted yet, says Minister. Mark Cavendish burgled at knife point at home in Essex.
That's very much Isle of Man news, isn't it?
Storm clear up underway as damage assessed. I just picked a wide range of topics as usual. I say the same.
You
thing.
forgot to mention the Castletown going to the polls in a commissioner's by-election.
I did, but
Oliver doesn't believe in our local democracy.
No, I do believe in local democracy, Archie. But
we're switching roles here.
Sorry.
Hey, what we were talking about last week in local governments. We were talking about local governments at some point.
Were we? I can't remember.
Anyway,
I just thought I won't mention that because the results are not out yet. They will be in a few hours' time. But yes, that story does follow the resignation of a local authority chair after she refused to resign from the board after she quit because her dog bit a member of the commissioner's staff.
Yes, I heard about that. It was quite the interesting case. But there was one more I'd like to add on there. An MLC has Marlene Masker has questioned whether who monitors COVID mask exemptions. I think that's quite an interesting one.
Definitely.
Who decides what is a reasonable exemption not to wear a face mask? I personally think face masks in a way are arbitrary. In a way, if you don't. I have a conflicting view. On one hand, there is some clinical evidence to suggest they're useful, and on the other hand, it is almost a method of government control where it's not always warranted. We should, I think, be left up to personal decision what to choose. I think the mask mandate is the part I'm against, not the act of wearing a mask.
I was listening to this week's, well, not this week's, but one of the Man in Line call-in shows that happened.
Oh, lucky you!
12 and 1 this week, and a gentleman was on, and he was talking about sort of the effect of wearing masks and how, although it does, it's proven to sort of prevent the spread of COVID-19, but how it has an effect on someone personally. So it reduces. I'm just putting my hand there in front of my face to sort of demonstrate, but it reduces like oxygen by 37%. Because the mask is there, so you're not being able to get fresh oxygen in, or oxygen as easily into your body. There's other such things as sort of dermatology. Can't get the word out, but to do with your skin. It doesn't improve your skin and other such reasons as well. But yes. It was interesting to see that mask wearing is between 20% and 50% in schools, because it is. If the way I see it is, it's up to someone's personal choice. But if they are, if they want people to, if they want to mandate it or whatever, then it requires for everyone to wear them. Because if not everyone's wearing them, then it sort of defeats the purpose in a way.
Do you believe there should be a mask mandate then?
No. No, I don't.
So then, is there any point in wearing a mask if there's no mask mandate?
You love to ask these horrible questions,
It's a conflicting point of view, because you've said there's no point in masks, particularly if there's no mask. If not everyone's wearing a mask, it doesn't necessarily do much, to a degree. You said I think that's why I understood it, at least.
Yes.
So if it doesn't really do too much.
If not everyone, if
if we don't mandate masks, is there any point in wearing a mask because it doesn't do much?
Yes, basically.
Yeah, there we are.
There's not much point wearing a mask unless everyone else is wearing them. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point there. But do you think if everyone wore masks, that would be useful?
Yes, because
so why would you mandate masks?
What do you mean?
Because you said it'd be useful if everyone wore masks. So surely, you said that no one.
So say for example in schools.
I do love being pedantic.
Yes. So say everyone in schools, there's a group of 50 people in an area, and 3 of those people are wearing masks.
Yep.
And if they don't have COVID, then there's not an awful lot of point of wearing them. But let's say, for example.
So why don't you mandate all 50 to wear them? Then you would solve the solution if one of them had COVID, they wouldn't spread it.
Yes, that's what I mean.
So you would then support mandating all 50 to wear them.
Yes.
So then you would support mandate masks.
Yes.
So Oliver, you've gone from.
Would support...
wait, Oliver. So you've gone from 2 minutes ago. No, let's not mandate masks. So now let's mandate masks. Sorry, I love playing these games, but
yes, because at this current time, you'd
support mandating masks.
It's a difficult one. The way I see it is,
This is a cool one. I agree. Yes.
I don't believe that, like, say for example in school now they're highly advised, so I'm not going to wear them because I don't see that it does an awful lot if they're not mandated.
But you would agree if they did mandate them.
Yes, I would wear a mask.
No, but would you agree with them mandating? Because to first mandate, they have to have agreement.
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
So that's how I see it. Have you got it now?
Yes, no, now I understand. Yeah. So we've had a double confirmation to 2 votes to one side and 1 vote to the other. So I think that's democracy in action in Oliver's mind. Yes, this is a fascinating issue. I personally, I think there needs to be personal choice. We live in a democracy. We have freedoms. We arguably have rights, and we shouldn't be mandated by a government what we can and can't do in terms of clothing or facial coverings. If we even look at it, it's almost a big bubble control. It is almost enacting quasi 1984 methods. We see otherwise. First it's masks. What is it next? Now they're looking in certain countries to mandate vaccinations as well. But then some countries are now saying, "Oh yes, but you're not fully jabbed if you haven't had the 2 vaccines, which you were told you would then be fully jabbed and you wouldn't need to take any more. You're now going to have a 3rd vaccine, and that's then when you're fully vaccinated." Now France is again looking at a 4th vaccine. So this government control on our lives would then be you've got to have this app on your phone. Is then you're going to have to do what? We look at China. China started at some point where it was more free than it was now, and now they look at the surveillance state. Are we then to become? It is a road, and yes, it might be a exaggerated road, and how far we're heading down. But we do run the risk if we then get comfortable, and we're comfortable with government telling what we can and can't wear. Then government, once you're comfortable with it, it's baby steps.
I'm not a huge fan of...
Nothing's ever done in totalitarianism as going from freedom one day to absolute totalitarianism the next day. It's baby steps.
Yeah.
Where will this lead?
I'm not a fan. Yeah, I agree with you there. Completely. I'm not a huge fan of government intervention unless it's completely, absolutely necessary.
So then would you agree with the mask mandate?
If it was absolutely necessary.
Is it absolutely necessary? Now.
Not at this moment in time.
But you said it before you'd agree with the government to introduce your mandate.
If it was not at this current time, if it was, I know I've sort of gone back on my word.
It's good to go around in circles. I agree. I do it all the time in my own mind.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know what's right from wrong now, Archie. After this,
I've bamboozled him. I've done a good job today, ladies and gentlemen. I bamboozled Oliver.
Yeah.
My aim after after about 3 seasons and however many episodes, I finally achieved my aim of breaking Oliver to the point of him being bamboozled. It's excellent. It's excellent. Oliver's yet to bamboozle me. That's his challenge.
That's coming.
That's coming soon. Coming up soon.
That's coming.
Stay
soon.
watching.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a confusing topic. We're conflicted between. I think we see media persuading us to wear masks. We see social media saying we must wear masks. We see government saying we must wear masks. We see mandates happening. We see people saying, "Oh, you don't kill anyone, wear a mask." We see all these type of messaging, and it does really, I think, create a confusing environment. Even with mass media? I think we saw this again with the video of Jacob Rees-Mogg. We see that media has a giant perception on how we view it, and now I've heard people talk about it and say, "Oh, yeah, but Jacob Rees-Mogg, he's next to go. He's on the comments. Oh, Tory scum. He's breaking lockdown rules," and it's like, no, he's not breaking lockdown rules. There are currently no restrictions in place for what he's doing. At that time, there weren't any restrictions. So
the problem is, it's
perception. People, one fake news goes out.
There's context. I got sent that video, and I thought there's not much context behind it. I assumed.
I can't blame you. Most of the stuff which goes out with the video, the captions don't contain any context whatsoever. I had to do my own research and fact check it.
So I just assumed, and because there was no sort of context with it, I assumed with the given circumstances that that it was related to sort of last year. And at the moment, there's so much going on, with the Conservatives. I mean, it came out today about the what's it called when you the doing up of the flat. What was the correct terminology? Redecorating. Redecorating. That's not redoing up. Redecorating the flat, and obviously it was confirmed that they had used government money. Or was that correct? Or
Give me 2 minutes.
But obviously that's come out, and just all sorts of stories coming out at this time when there's so much going on. I mean, it doesn't look. It's not a great image for the Conservatives at all. I mean, to be honest,
No. What was done was, I think, Conservative peer donated the 52,000 to the Conservative Party to cover the bills, and then Boris Johnson repaid that. So it was really, I think, just a cash flow problem, I assume. I don't know why all these things. It's quite hilarious at the moment. We're seeing little tiny things that usually wouldn't at all be blown out of proportion. They wouldn't really be in mainstream headlines and everywhere and everyone banging on about it. But all these little things, they're almost now accumulated into a giant bomb that's waiting to explode. So I say, raise Thatcher out of the grave and put her back in charge, and we'll soon see a return to proper government. I think that's my solution.
Another, one or two stories I've got left, Archie, but we'll try get them quickly as possible, is a local MHK claims teachers telling students to go meat-free to save the planet. Have you been told to go? I know you already are meat-free.
I've not been told that, and if they are being told that, it's ridiculous. They shouldn't be told. They shouldn't be persuaded to do so. It is almost an ideological issue, I'd argue. Veganism. It is, at least if you're persuaded, you're pressuring other people to do it. I think that then does become an issue, because it should be, again, a matter of personal choice, just like masks. We shouldn't be advocating. It's a convoluted issue, but I think as a teacher, you're in a role of authority, and therefore you should not express an issue, and you shouldn't express an opinion on that issue. I mean, without expressing the other side. You're giving a very biased view. I think that's not right.
The education minister then replied with, "This is what the department considers to be a balanced diet." But that doesn't mean that a teacher can't comment and say, "Well, I actually think that being vegetarian is better for the planet."
A balanced diet has absolutely it really varies. It depends on what science you look at. The UK government's their advice for a balanced diet: eat 5 a day. Most people know 5 a day is nowhere near enough. But if you say you need to eat 15 a day, no one's going to do it, are they? They want an easy, achievable goal. But a balanced diet isn't necessarily balanced.
But the teacher can be teaching the curriculum and go, "This is a balanced diet," but I don't think that's right.
That's fine, but they should express both views. They shouldn't express a single solitary one.
Yeah.
And I think there was a case where I think the chair of the NUF on the island said that teachers were calling farmers evil or something like that, and that was absolutely ridiculous, because or calling farming practices very dangerous or barbaric or something insulting. And I think that again is wrong, because farmers do a wonderful job generally. They apart from there is one. We do farm traffic does sometimes cause me annoyance on the roads, especially when it starts to, on my road especially, get incredibly muddy and then water spilling everywhere. But apart from that, farmers are generally they do a fabulous job for our society. So I don't think there's anything. There's no need to go like that. And I think again, we're looking at personal choice, personal opinion, and we shouldn't be in a position of authority advocating that. I can advocate that as my own being, I don't have authority over. But when a teacher is in a position of authority or perceived authority, I think that's very, very important. They give a balanced view. I'm sure we'll have this discussion hopefully in the new year. We'll get a guest on and talk about impartiality in teaching.
Yes, of course, indeed. There's been a second consecutive win for the Blues, which is obviously Castle Rushen High School in the big one. They beat King William's College 17-15. I mean, it's only really apparent because
I'm going to blame the captain. I'm going to blame the captain of the King William's College team. I think he's at fault here. Yes, but they couldn't import their players this year.
That's quite relevant to me and Archie, as I, a former scholar of Castle Rushen High School.
Yeah, but it's quite interesting. It's a horrible weather day for it though. It was absolutely chucking down. So it wasn't. I think looking at the lineups from both sides this year, I'm not a rugby person myself. In sports, I know anything remotely about is tennis. But I think looking at the lineup this year, it did look pretty strong on the other side. As I know I think on the KWC, some were injured. Pre-match, I think one had concussion who was going to set to play. So
he's been hitting his head off a brick wall.
They really couldn't import the players this year. So they were unfortunately at risk. Yes.
Well, there we have it.
second consecutive. But yeah, going on, if we look at kind of UK news again, do you think we should replace the UK government, Oliver?
Well,
I'm back to grilling.
I believe that.
But first, congratulations to Boris and Carrie, because they now had a child.
Yes, a baby girl. I understand.
Second child since he's become prime minister.
I was going to say. I thought you were going to say second child, and I thought he's had a lot more than.
We
that.
don't know how many.
Oh,
we don't know how many. No.
No, he might be lying to us. Yes.
He might not know.
He probably doesn't, Archie. That's a scary fact. Yes. Do I believe that we should have a new government? It's difficult to say. Do you mean a new conservative sort of government? A new, a refresh of
anything?
Who's at the top?
Get the current government out, basically. That's what I'm
saying. Yeah.
Who would you have replaced them?
Do you mean bringing in a new leadership of?
Yes, new leadership of the party. Or you could argue, let's have a no confidence motion in the government and get a new government in, totally from a different party. Who would you say should replace the government?
As leader of the Conservative Party,
or having Keir Starmer in charge.
Do I want Keir Starmer in charge? I'm not entirely sure whether I do or not.
Or Angela Rayner.
Or Angela, no.
I think we should put Diane Abbott in charge of government.
Oh, goodness.
We'd soon have a massive reduction in public spending. Massive reduction. Because after all, recruiting 23,000 police officers only costs 800,000. She is getting a bargain for it. I don't see why we haven't put her in our leadership earlier.
I don't know why she's not in Treasury.
Exactly.
Really
she
don't.
would make excellent savings across the board. But who would you replace? Would you replace Boris with someone in the Conservative Party? Who would you replace him with?
I don't know who'd want him, who's sort of leadership material. I mean, there's been talks of potentially Liz Truss or
Thatcher's tank last week,
or Rishi Sunak. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's sort of gunning for it. I don't think
Rishi.
I don't think Dominic Raab will.
I thought for a minute they said Dominic Cummings. I was gonna say, not sure on that one, Oliver. But yeah.
Who would you say, Archie? Come on, I need a question.
It's perfectly open for questions on the floor here, Oliver. I'll just turn off your mic if I don't hear it. But I'd quite like to actually see. He'll never run, but if he did run, it would be excellent. Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Oh goodness.
Honestly, he would be. I think he would make a great prime minister. He's a bit low key. I don't think he would necessarily run for prime minister, but if he did, I would definitely support his leadership bids when it goes to the party to vote. Yes. Beyond that, I would support, I think, Rishi Sunak over Liz Truss, generally. Mm-hmm. They both perform well. I think Dominic Raab, I don't necessarily think he's dropped out of leadership running, potentially. I think Sunak's in a strong position, so is Liz Truss. So between those two, I think. Definitely not. I actually know, or Mrs. May. Theresa May would make a good recovery.
That would be interesting to see.
She didn't mislead anyone, did she, Oliver? She's actually a very good prime minister.
Yeah, I thought she was.
Good prime minister at the wrong time.
And I mean, she got a bit too emotional towards the end.
Emotional?
Yes, on her departure.
But most prime ministers are a bit upset on their departure.
Yeah.
Oliver.
I know, but she was quite upset.
She's no more emotional than we saw, like when Winston Churchill left, or we see. It's not that. I just double check. You're not putting this down to gender, are you, Oliver?
Absolutely not. I wouldn't do such a thing.
Just double checking. But yeah, we have posed, I think, some interesting points raised. Yeah, I think that does draw us generally to the conclusion. I'm not sure I'm not sure why that's playing.
Hello, welcome to Mike's
I don't know what happened there.
Did you not even press anything?
I think I must have clicked the side of a mouse and it decides to set us off on a ridiculous voyage onto our jingles. But yeah, I think that does roughly conclude this episode. It's been quite interesting.
Does it?
I've managed to grill Oliver. He's been roasted on the barbecue.
Honestly.
We've gone over to Australia and having Australian Christmas here at PolitiBabble. We've put Oliver onto the barbecue. It's his turn to go barbecuing next week.
I do believe I think I have too many commitments now for this show, Archie.
Yeah, don't be putting that card on me, Oliver. But yes, next week you can enjoy us with a wonderful Christmas special, I suppose. Because then it's Christmas literally the week after.
Yes.
So yes, join us next week for a wonderful Christmas special. I'll pack in some Christmas music as well.
Yes, indeed.
Locate some.
I may even have this sort of... I was planning on whether I leave it till the end of the year or the Christmas one, have some sort of compilation of our series.
I haven't seen that. Save it as a surprise.
I've not even started it yet.
What's supposed to say, Oliver? What's supposed to say? Anyway, yes. Cheerio from me.
Au revoir. You've been PolitiBabbled.